Exactly. At last you were when I first visiting you. Now you're like a silly young woman. Pretty clever using my shadow as a payment for passage, even though it wasn't yours. Thank you, Wendy said uncertainly. Wait, so let me get this straight. You have the shadow I left behind to my enemy, crazy old codfish whose hand I took, who's been after me ever since. Yes. Yes, I did that. She cleared her throat. I did the worst possible thing, and I'm so sorry, Peter. You don't know how. But she was interrupted by a loud crowing, a resounding cock-a-doodle-doo from Peter's wide mouth. He was grinning and spinning, hands on hips, laughing and dancing. I get to fight pirates for you, sang. I get to battle old codfish to get my shadow back. Oh, I've been meaning to give him another hook. This is perfect opportunity. Well done, Wendy. You're brilliant. He grabbed her hands and spun around, causing Tinkerbell to go flying over heels through the air and then land with a hard thump on the sand. Wendy should have been over the room that the legendary Peter Pan was delighted by her antics and was now dancing with her. She should have felt a happiness and satisfaction in her heart that she never would have known before. Rather than earning his scorn or hatred, she had impressed her hero. It was a glorious, greedy feeling, one that Peter Pan particularly inspired. She could see herself doing anything to recapture that feeling, to make him feel that way about her again and again. If he couldn't feel about her any other way. But she looked over to where Tinkerbell had landed. The fairy was a little stunned and a little crumpled and glaring furiously at Wendy, not Peter. If her eyes had been coals, it would have been lit that was left of Wendy's dress on fire. Wendy's quickly drew Peter's hand. Oh yes, I'm so sorry. The shadows never mind your trade. It was terribly selfish of me. Oh, it's all fine, Peter said, waving her hands at her. Come on, let's go get the pirates. He turned and went and dived in the air, but paused on the ground in a ridiculous tiptoe pose. Little help here, Tink? He asked. The fairy shook her head forcefully, crossed her arms and pouting. Wendy felt weariness descend upon her. This was a sticking point. This was where their quest dance ended. Despite the evolution of her Tinkerbell and friendship, Tinkerbell is very much a fairy, prone to a sudden passions, savage angers, swift tears, and whatever moment demanded, but the next one forgot. Just like Peter Pan. Just like the characters in a story after who never change just because you don't want them to. You want them to stay the same forever. Like you wish your friends or your relationship with your mother would. Wendy watched two of them bicker with a strange mixture of feelings. They were both like children. Wendy wasn't really, not anymore. Despite living in her parents' house and taking on tasks like mother in a game of pretend and dreaming out the window, making up stories no one wanted to listen to, she had started to want other things, even if she couldn't name any of that, and had grown tired of her current life. But was that change so terrible, really? Would it be better to stay in Neverland forever and never change? To be the same talky, nervous Wendy forever, to always have the same desire to make others like her by taking care of them, to always be the same lonely girl who never fit in any world, to always dream and never do. Sometimes stories need to be pushed along. Things need to happen. People need to accomplish things. And as long as Peter and Tink were somewhere in the world never changing, and Wendy knew that, she would be happy with whatever happened to her. As someone who changed in the course of a story. As someone who changed the course of a story. Actually, she's right, she said, her wonderful storytelling mind coming up with a useful plan that would make everyone happy and behave. I mean, you should still give him fairy dust, but he should stay where he is. The pirates have been running all over the seas looking for him. It would be much easier to work this out by just having them come to us, don't you think? Peter and Tinkerbell frowned almost identically in confusion. I've said this before. I really don't think the three of us can go up against the pirates all by ourselves. I'm not that handy with a sword, a real one. I'm sure Tinkerbell can be quite dangerous in her own way, but as someone who is actually captive to those seafaring hoodlums, I don't know how much good fairy dust against gunpowder and savage bloodlust. I don't need help, Peter protested. All I need is to be able to fly. I can take on Old Hook by myself. But can you, I wonder? Wendy said thoughtfully. I think I'm beginning to figure this all out. You've been tired and weak without your shadow, just like I was. And now Hook has your shadow in a cage, a nasty one. And you were talking about strange pains and aches. I think Hook is getting you through your own shadow. Maybe he can't kill you directly, but he can hurt it, and it can affect you. This gave Peter pause. A cage? He has my shadow in a cage? I'm afraid so, with all sorts of nasty barbs and pincers inside. Tinkerbell watched Peter closely for his decision. As he considered this information, he unthinkingly offered the fairy his hand up. She grinned from ear to pointed ear. I don't like this. I don't like this at all, he swore. Using my shadow. That's against the rules. That's bad form. So I guess what you're saying is I need a crew. An army. All right then, to the Lost Boys. Yeah, together we'll all say Neverland. Let's go get him. He made to fly again. You should stay here, Wendy said, remember? We decided that a moment ago. Even if you're assuming you're yourself enough to fly, Tinkerbell would be faster. She'll fly there, and you and I will. Tinkerbell narrowed her eyes at Wendy. I mean, I'll go. Yes, that's best, Wendy said, correcting herself quickly. Tinkerbell can stay here and look after you, if that's all right. I'll just need very precise directions. And some more fairy dust, if you don't mind, for me and Peter. Tinkerbell closed her eyes and bowed politely. Of course, for you. She flew up in a dainty spiral around Peter, gracefully whisking slow showers of golden sparks over him. Peter laughed in delight. She threw the dust over his shoulder without looking at Wendy getting in her face. Not out of spite, it was just that the fairy's eyes were on Peter. I'm not sure this relationship is very good for either of you, Wendy muttered, wiping dust off her nose. No one paid her any attention. It's easy to go there, Peter said. He squatted down and pulled out his dagger to draw a map in the sand. We're here at Peg Leg Point. Then we'll hang out at Blind Man's Bluff. Then we'll follow the river up. Sorry, which river? Wendy asked, trying to understand. All she said were vague lines and gashes and one sinuous, perhaps watery track. What do you mean, which river? Peter said, laughing. He pushed his hat back down so it dipped over his face. There's only one river in Neverland. Tinkerbell jingled, shaking her head. There's two now, Wendy said. I made one. For perhaps the second time in his existence, Peter Pan was shocked into silence. When we were with the first, she continued primly, trying to sort of not be smug, had Peter ever created anything from nothing in Neverland? Anything so grand? You went to the first? Peter gulped. The mermaids told us you went there about obtaining a new shadow. I did. Good-for-nothing jerks, he growled, kicking his hand over his mat. They wouldn't even let me in. I had to walk the whole way and they wouldn't let me in. Told me to deal with my own piddling issues. Me, Peter Pan, I'm practically the king of Neverland. Wendy turned the declaration over in her head. How often did Peter say things like this? How often did he act like that? How true was it? No wonder Slightly was chafing a bit. Well, you consider yourself lucky, perhaps. They tried to trap us here. We were very nearly could have spent eternity in a desert maze trying to figure our way out. I can't even believe you were there to begin with, he said, turning to Tink. Tink, that was incredibly dangerous. You know, for someone who isn't me. You really did that? You went in there? For me? Tinkerbell nodded shyly. Huh, that's some powerful stuff. There, he scratched his chin. Whatever it is you feel, I mean. Wouldn't you do the same for me? Tinkerbell asked, the tips of wings quivering. Wendy felt her heart stop. She waited anxiously as her friend for answer. Yeah, of course, the boy said, shaking his head in disgust. But that's not because of love. That's because we're buddies. You're my first mate. You're the most important member of my crew. I wouldn't let anything happen to you, ever. Tinkerbell clasped her hands in delight and looked at him with shining eyes. He smiled and patted her on the head. Good enough, Wendy decided. Whatever you choose, Hangman's Tree in there. He put an X on the ground. Can you remember from when we went there before? Tinkerbell asked. It's southeast of the Black Dragon Mountains, about halfway to the coast, and a roaring clearing like a fire or a meteor cleared it out. Thank you, Tinkerbell, Wendy said. That was very precise and clear. Did you name it? Peter asked suddenly. Name what? The river. Did you name it yet? He was deadly serious. No, I don't suppose I have, Wendy said. Hadn't we better? We absolutely had better. Peter put a finger to his chin, thinking. Wendy furrowed her brow, trying to come up with something. Wendy looked at them in exasperation. They didn't have time for this. Peter's eyes lit up as he opened his mouth. What about, we're not calling it the River Pan? Wendy interrupted. Wasn't, Peter said peevishly. I was going to call it the River Peter. Tinkerbell giggled, sparks of dust falling around her. No, how about the first river? You should like that. It makes sense, but it absolutely makes no sense at all. It's just Neverland style. The first river, the river the first. But it's not really the first river. I love it. He clapped her hand on her back, rather a little too hard, and she fell forward. What if the pirates get here before you get back? What if Hook gets to Peter before we're ready? Tinkerbell asked. What about your fairy friends? Can you ask them to help? To at least keep you company? Wendy asked, to keep an eye out. The little fairy gave her a nearly uncomprehending look. I know you aren't closest with him really, but this is an emergency. You're in serious need. All of Neverland is in trouble. Thorn might come. He seems a decent sort. Tinkerbell tossed her head and began to jiggle contemptuously. Don't, Wendy interrupted. Don't let your ego get in the way of protecting yourself from fairies. I don't need protecting by fairies, Peter squawked indignantly. Wendy and Tinkerbell ignored him. Finally, the fairy nodded. All right, Peter. Good, Wendy said with a sigh. Well, look, I should head out. Stay here, she ordered, standing up and readying herself to go. Tinkerbell, take care of him. Make sure he doesn't leave. But if the pirates appear, fly, if you can, into the jungle and hide. Tinkerbell saluted her smartly. But Peter just stood there at her mouth agape. Wendy looked down at herself. She hadn't even realized how heroic a pose she struck. From her shadow, which took this opportunity to actually behave, she realized how she appeared. Powerful, strong, with a scandalous short tunic cinched around her waist and improvised leggings that showed a prodigious amount of her newly tanned skin. Her hair was down around her shoulders. She bet she was the spitting image of an Amazon, short of bow. Gosh, Wendy, you should look different when I first saw you, Peter mumbled. Tinkerbell put her hands on her hips and started to jingle. Well, I must be off, Wendy said quickly. Bye. And she took off into the air, like Nike, triumphant. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.